waiting for Twitch.
Why are you whispering?
You are listening.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Trophy Wars. This is episode 532. I'm your host, Chicky Mick, alongside with me, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Alex.
I gotta say, fellas, it's been a really good weekend so far, and it's gonna be a great show to cap it off. So I got myself a nice Dos Equis here. Just gonna sip this and enjoy the ride.
He brings the awesome. It's I Yield to No One.
Hi.
You know, you gotta get more enthusiastic with your hellos.
Hi.
You know he's not gonna give you what you want when you ask for it.
Yeah, I know. And we continue our stream of having awesome guests. We are bringing on a classic fan favorite. It's Mr. Jeff Hanna. How are you doing, sir?
Great. I would like to start off by pointing out there seems to be some confusion on Facebook. I am not Zack Snyder.
You know, you troll with the Royal Group with that. That's all Daryl.
I'm going wide with it.
What's with your hatred of Zack Snyder?
He destroys everything he touches.
Wow.
So wait, like you didn't even like 300?
No, and soon after 300, he was supposedly working on a treatment for a Saints Row movie, and thank goodness that never happened.
Wait, you saying we could have had a Saints Row movie?
You could have, but it would have been a Zack Snyder Saints Row movie, so it wouldn't have had anything to do with Saints Row, and it would have been grimdark and probably centered around the name Martha.
You come on the show and you throw me off my game so much because you make me laugh. Oh, God.
And see, that's the thing is you're not even prepared for it now, even though we've podcasted with Jeff numerous times. Still not enough times, but numerous times already.
And I got to be honest, as much as I love Jeff coming on the show, every single time we record, he kind of makes me feel stupid.
I don't mean to.
No. You don't do it on purpose because you say something so intellectual that I just don't get it. And I'm like, what did he just say?
Well, that's why he's a fan favorite, because whenever they have to listen to the rest of us yokels, they're like, man, they really dumbed down the source material this week.
Ooh.
Look, I'm
Anyway.
It's okay.
Anyway,
I'm
hi,
self-deprecating. It's fine.
All right, so if you guys don't remember, we are live on Twitch. We have a couple people in the chat already. Latin Legacy is here. Rick is here. Welcome for joining us. You guys are in for a treated show because every time Jeff is on the show, it turns out to be one of our most downloaded shows ever because he is such an awesome guest. So Jeff, let's do a little news before we get fully into the show.
Sure.
Last time you were on the show, you were the principal technical artist at Volition.
Every time I've been on the show before today, I have been a principal technical artist at Volition.
And you will no longer have that position.
No, I am now a senior tools programmer at NVIDIA.
Okay, and for anybody that doesn't know, including myself, what does that mean?
It means I'm doing the exact same thing I was doing, but I'm doing it on a different 3D engine for a different company.
All right, and is one of the perks getting a 3080 Ti?
I have a 3090 in my work machine.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
And a 3060 laptop.
And one of the cool things about this, and, you know, if I go too far, just tell me to shut up, but you can now work from home, correct?
Yes, I was working from home. The last 2 years I worked at Volition. I think maybe by this point they have started to ask some people to come back into the office. My job with NVIDIA is work from home for as long as I want. There is an NVIDIA office in Champaign, Illinois, and it's just a matter of minutes from my house. And I could go in there whenever I want. I've got a badge and everything, but there is no requirement that I ever go in that office.
Well, that is awesome. Now that you're not with Volition anymore, what can you tell us about Saints Row?
That's coming out this month.
I'm sorry. Yield was laughing. I didn't hear your answer.
He said it comes out next month.
Comes out next month. PC, PlayStation, Xbox. And it will be open world, urban environment, crime hijinks.
Okay, that's not exactly what I was looking for, but thank you.
That's exactly what I was looking for.
Well,
I honestly cannot tell you a whole bunch about it. One, I think my NDA is still in force, and I'm going to act like my NDA is in force because I still wish the best for Volition. I think the game is going to be wonderful. But for the 2 years that we were doing work from home, I was working more tools and engine side than game side. And so I was using a remote desktop connection to my machine at work, not a local work machine with a VPN connection. So I couldn't really run the game at an effective frame rate to play it. So I really didn't play the game for the last 2 years I was at the company.
all right, fair enough.
And I think that was kind of like, we talked about this before the show. I think that was part of my misunderstanding because, I just thought that Jeff was on the team working on the game, but Jeff's, responsibilities were more overall. Like, he was working on the overall tech, the engine that Volition uses. So he was more like, I likened it to the Pauly quote from Biodome, where it's like everyone's thinking locally and he's thinking globally.
Right.
So
I'm working on Unreal, not on Fortnite.
There you go. That's a much better, comparison without having to take it back to the 90s, even though I love the 90s. It's my wheelhouse.
Well, we're going to go back to the 90s on a few of these topics today, so that's good.
All right, but before we get into our topics, we have to do our updated trophy count. I am level 683 with total trophies of 16,757 with 372 platinums. Alex?
Come on now, Tricky. Ain't nobody got no time to be looking up these trophies.
It's on the agenda that gets sent to you every single week.
Yeah, and I know, and I'm right there. I'm just saying. Level 460, total trophy count of 8,000. I got over 8,000 now? That is tremendous. 8,021 total trophies with a platinum count of 126 and 125 games. And I tell you, fellas, I haven't done it yet, but we're about to go up one notch in that category. You just wait.
Yield?
I am currently a newly minted 477 with 8,626 trophies and 154 platinums.
Sid is level 603 with total trophies of 12,719 with 288 platinums. And Jeff, we know you don't play PlayStation because you like playing on the dark side.
I was convalescing from having COVID week before last. I almost rented the Uncharted film, but I rented Everything Everywhere All at Once instead. So I almost became kind of adjacent to a trophy, but then I backed off.
Well, if I remember correctly, and my memory's not as good as because I'm getting old, the whole thing with you getting a negative trophy was you were playing Uncharted on a dev kit, right?
I was playing Uncharted on a PS3 dev kit that I had kicked over into retail mode, and then I had to kick it back into developer mode to test Red Faction Guerrilla, and that wiped out the trophy that I had earned in Uncharted.
So it seems you're very drawn to Uncharted, sir.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's... there are some Sony properties that you can play on the PC now. I haven't gotten any of those.
I have a question that I wanted to ask Jeff. So we know that, I think even people who are fans of Sony have, there are things they really like, pros and cons. There are things that we really like about Sony, but other things we're like, man, what are y'all doing? Jeff, you've been a critic of Sony and fairly in a lot of ways, but as far as a company goes, as far as SIE, when it comes to somebody in the industry who has insight that we don't have, what do you think that Sony does really well about their games or their strategies, and what they do really poorly? What are their pros and cons?
I don't know about a lot of cons right now. The cons that I had back in the day, well, one, the PlayStation 3 was a real PITA to develop for because of the cell processor, and having to feed those secondary SPU units, especially when you're making a game like Red Faction Guerrilla. And their certification process was always really hit or miss there because you had to send your game off to different certification authorities in different parts of the world. So your game could pass in North America and fail in Europe. And you'd be like, but it's the same game, so why aren't you guys actually using the same testing methodology and certification parameters all the way around? Where Microsoft was, you sent it to Microsoft and it either certified or it didn't certify. Sony got a lot better in that regard. It's now single source certification like Microsoft does. I don't have anything against the company. I honestly don't have anything against the platform. There are really good platform exclusives. Microsoft has learned a lot about that, and the amount of acquisitions that they've made over the past half year or more points to that. Although Microsoft is also being very open about they're not going to force any of these current multi-platform companies to be proprietary to Xbox. Microsoft's just building out a games empire. Microsoft has been far more open with crossplay than Sony was, and that could be a negative. I definitely put that one in the negative category. But overall, people prefer one platform over the other, or a lot of people own both, and that's fine. The point is that we should all have access to a whole host of games, and we should have access to back catalogs so we don't lose the history of what the industry's done. And both Microsoft and Sony are very good on both of those fronts now.
So like with what they're doing with PS Plus Premium, where they're offering a lot of PlayStation 1 games. I'm sure that maybe not a ton yet, but hopefully that kind of builds and builds and builds, because Nintendo's really squandered that opportunity with their SNES and NES channels for their Switch Online service. But that has to be a positive for what Sony's trying to do, is bring back more of those old games that you can play via a subscription fee to their service.
Yes. We shouldn't be, we have a new. I understand that maybe like the current whatever the next generation of console is going to be as a hypothetical. I can understand if maybe that doesn't natively play back catalog, but that doesn't mean that these corporations should be locking off the back catalogs. We as consumers and we as hobbyist gamers should have access to the decades of depth that the industry has created at any given point in time.
And I think that kind of stuff, like making so much available via PlayStation Plus, newer games, older games, like it seems like Sony's finally, it's kind of the light's gone on where it's like, okay, that Gaikai technology we bought, because I know that's been a big criticism in the past, maybe they are finally starting to understand this is how we need to use it.
They had the capability of doing Game Pass 3 or more years before Microsoft did Game Pass. They bought Gaikai a long time ago. And other than getting Dave Perry a gigantic payout, they really kind of squandered it for close to half a decade. And that really surprised me.
But wasn't Gaikai basically the foundation for what was PlayStation Now?
Yes, it was, but they could have aimed larger, and they didn't. And then Microsoft aimed much larger, and now Sony's kind of playing catch up.
All right, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was almost going to say it was a lack of vision, but I don't know if lack is the right word. Their vision was pointed elsewhere, where Microsoft has come out very strongly over the past 4 years or so about we want to get the catalog of games that we are in control of and making in as many people's hands as possible. And web streaming became a big way to do that. And they really, I thought, made a really great step when the chip shortage hit and people couldn't get Xboxes, the current ones. They upgraded all of the Game Pass streaming centers to be Xbox Series level, so you could just stream the Series level games on your current Xboxes using the Edge browser, because they wanted people to experience the new games, and they knew that they couldn't get a hold of the hardware to do it. And it's that sort of vision and the ability to adapt their data centers that shows that Microsoft just wants the games out there for people to play. And it's going to be the streaming systems that give us the forever ability to play the back catalogs.
All right, now I have a question for you. I don't know how knowledgeable you're going to be in answering this, but we often hear about, and you kind of referenced the cell technology in the PS3. Uh-huh. And a lot of people now, with the new PlayStation Plus Essential and Premium and all that, a lot of people are complaining because the PS3 games that you get through that service, you have to stream. You're not able to download, and you also referenced to how hard it was to develop for it. Is that cell technology still affecting us as gamers now? With that we can't download the games, we have to stream them because the technology is so different.
Yes. you're not going to take the source code for a game, and a lot of times Sony doesn't even have access to the source code. Even for first-party game companies, they probably don't have access to the source code. But you're not just going to take a PS3 game and recompile the source code on a modern x86 architecture. It's just the internals of the two CPUs are so vastly different. The way memory is accessed is so vastly different. It's the same as the Xbox 360. It was a PowerPC processor, which is for that was it was weird because both companies hit these weird outlier architectures right then. Now, granted, the PS2 wasn't, but the original Xbox is closer to an Xbox One or an Xbox Series than the Xbox 360 is, because the original Xbox and the One and the Series are all x86 based. They're very, very finely tuned PC architecture, AMD-based PC architecture. And the PS4 is a very finely tuned AMD PC architecture. As is the PS5. The PS5 is a little closer than the PS4 was, but they are both sort of approaching this minimum of what they're going to be because of the availability of the hardware and the people that know the architecture. But the cell architecture was just way out there bizarre. Sony took a gamble. They partnered with Toshiba and they made this new CPU, and it was pretty interesting. But it just was not. It didn't have the same depth and breadth of programming libraries that the Xbox did, because even though the 360 was a PowerPC architecture, Microsoft adapted DirectX, and they added all of the necessary cross-compiler libraries to Visual Studio. So you weren't really coding for a different architecture. You were coding to what you understood, and then Microsoft had given you the tools to make it work on that platform. It really wasn't the same on the Sony side of things. You had to really understand what to do with that chip and the sub-processors around it to get that platform to do anything. So you've ended up with these games that ran really great on that specific piece of hardware, but the only way you're going to play them is you're going to have to play them on that hardware and stream it. Now, that will switch at some point because time marches on and newer processors get faster and faster, and at some point emulation will be able to emulate those chips at a speed where you can probably run it through an emulator at a reasonable, acceptable frame rate. But for the cell processor, that's going to be a while. So really the only way to do it is to run it on native hardware and stream the game to you, or you're not going to see that library.
All right. Fair enough. I mean, I know a lot of our listeners probably didn't understand, why we couldn't download the games, but I think you gave a very, very impressive answer to that, because I didn't know a lot of that stuff either.
Yeah, and with the PS3, I think Sony made a lot of mistakes with the PS3, but take your risks, make your mistakes, just learn from them. Don't keep making the same mistakes. And it seems like, and Jeff, you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, it seems like they have made it a point to make the PS4 and the PS5 easier to develop for than it was, at least for the PS3.
Yes. There are some differences between the PlayStation and the Microsoft architectures. It comes down to memory access and pooled memory versus unified memory and the type of memory they're using. But overall, they have, and OpenGL versus DirectX and this, that, and the other thing. But overall, they've made it very easy. I'm not saying that the two companies work together on it, but they've both approached an optimal platform that makes it easy for the developers to actually make cross-platform games.
All right.
It definitely makes it easy for engine manufacturers like Unreal to target their engine to multiple platforms, and then the game developers just target Unreal, and that removes a lot of the complexity. It's a far different world of game development now than it even was on the 360 and PS3 days because of really strong engines like Unreal.
All right. Yield, do you have a question for Jeff before we move on?
No.
Okay. All right. So before we get into what we're playing, again, for the third week in a row, our community has stepped up and gave us some stats. And Alex was very happy because he's in the lead on the stats.
I finally get to be in the lead on something, and I can tell you, Jeff is going to love this segment. He's going to be like, man, these guys spend this much time doing what?
So Mark Fraser in our Facebook group has compiled a new list. His post says, bored today, so I hope everyone's ready for a weird, in-depth view of trophy collections. Over the years, my drive has changed between total trophies, plat counts, completion percentage, list difficulty, etc. It's also reflective in the podcast. I wonder if there's a way to incorporate all fairly to give a trophy score as such. Alas, the method I've created may be the fairest. So for the three main hosts, the scores are: Alex, you got 31,513. I have 30,541, and Yield has 30,120. The way he calculated this was: you get 1 point for each trophy, you get 5 points for each plat, and then uncommon to rare trophies, you get 3 points per trophy. That gives us our total points. Then when we take in the completion percentage minus the number of common trophies you have given a score boost or deduction, which happened in my case, you have a low completion and high common trophies. Then he multiplied the score by the score to boost to give you a score. And then he wants more people to give their PSN names so he can add us to the list. But currently, according to Mark, Alex, you are in first place, I am in second place, and Yield, you are in third place.
Well, and the reason that, at least for, I'm not super great with math, but I figure I could decipher this, is that the reason I got such a big boost is because my completion percentage is 85% as far as trophies go. So I had a big boost in that regard over you all, which is kind of what put me over the top.
Yes, you had a percentage, a multiplier percentage of 49.68. Yield, you had 29.64, and I had a negative 17.32. So, somehow I took a negative in this. Jeff, did I just confuse the hell out of you?
Very much so.
Okay. If anybody wants to see the post to understand exactly what I'm saying, just go to it. It was made on Saturday, so go look at the post, and hopefully Mark will give us updated stats on this in the future.
Yeah, big shout out to Mark, and a big thanks to him for doing this and putting as much effort. Gareth has put effort into this too. Thank you all for, and I think Rick also looking at Tricky's trophies. The community, analyzing our trophies and giving us different scores and different ways to rank us. So we appreciate that you all recognize the work that we put in. We definitely want to recognize the work that you all put in as well. So big shout out to Mark for that. And Jeff, you may shake your head at the trophy aspect of it, but hey, we're dumping tons of money into the games industry trying to get these virtual things. So cheers.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I go achievement hunting. That's fine.
Which you were shocked at your gamer score. I mean, I guess you thought your gamer score wasn't like as high as it was. But what games lately have you been playing to up your gamer score? Like, what are the kind of games you've been chasing achievements in?
I 100%ed Weird West.
How is that?
It takes a little getting into.
Is it weird?
It's weird. It was a little rough around the edges when I played it, because I played it when it first came out. I've heard it's been patched up a couple of times. It's well worth it to get all the way through it. You play the game as 5 different characters. And at the end of it, a lot of the choices you made and the amount of things you did are used to basically judge you. And I didn't expect any of that when I played the game. I thought it was just going to be a Western, but it's got this weird sort of metagame that you learn about as you play it. And it's okay. I liked it. I finished it. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I would go back and play it again to try to come up with a different outcome. I've also been playing Tunic. I'm very good friends with the husband and wife team that run Finji. So I always play the stuff that they put out. Tunic, I haven't played it for enough time now that I've probably forgotten how to read the runes. But it's a lot of fun. It's got some really deep puzzles. And a bunch of us from Volition and from NVIDIA. There's a lot of ex-Volition people at NVIDIA, believe it or not, about a dozen of us. We've been playing a ton of Space Engineers recently, which is always sort of a fun game to get into and build stuff and have battles. It's a survival game with construction, but all spaceship based essentially.
All right. Before we move on with the show,
and Sea of Thieves, always.
Jeff, do you think with the news that Ubisoft is actually going to get Skull and Bones out, do you think that's going to eat into the Sea of Thieves crowd?
Not at all.
Two different games?
Not at all. I think that they're similar but different enough. From what it looks like to me, Skull and Bones is going to have a much more serious side to it, where Sea of Thieves is just go in and just make some cartoony mayhem. I also don't understand the concept of 2 days after it was announced Skull and Bones, and then announced that Skull and Bones comes out the day before God of War Ragnarok. Like, it's going to get steamrolled.
It sounds familiar.
No, Tricky said that. See, I thought the bigger problem was that it's taken them so long to get the game out, but also the fact that, a lot of games come out on Game Pass, with your subscription. With Microsoft owning Sea of Thieves, I can't see them actually putting this game on Game Pass. I think they're going to be like, yeah, you got to buy this because we have Sea of Thieves and we don't want you to eat into our game.
I'll be interested. I'll be surprised because Microsoft is also very hands-off about where their studios release their games. Great, yes. State of Decay and Sea of Thieves were tentpole original Game Pass games. Sea of Thieves is the reason I originally bought into Game Pass. You can buy Sea of Thieves lock, stock, and barrel on Steam now. If you don't want to go through Game Pass, you can buy it on Microsoft Store if you don't want to go through Game Pass. So I don't know that it would surprise me if they did that. I wouldn't be super surprised, but I would be somewhat surprised. I don't know. The game has such a troubled history of development that I'm treating it not at all as any sort of day zero interest. I'm going to let it cook a little bit and see what people say. I'll probably end up trying it, but I like Sea of Thieves for not being photorealistic and serious. I like it for it's lighthearted and funny, and it really, at the end of the day, you don't get all that pissed off if you have a ship full of loot and someone takes it from you, because there's always more loot to go get.
See, when you say that, I kind of envision something that kind of like in the style of Fortnite, and we know how popular Fortnite is. So, super realistic isn't always, the right way to go with a game. So, and it's weird because when you talk about Skull and Bones, like a cool concept, but they also, from what I've heard, they built it off an Assassin's Creed game, a mechanic in an Assassin's Creed game, and it's like the fact that they had to change the concept of the game partway through the development tells me that they had this idea at the beginning, but it didn't have meat to it. So like, oh wait, it's like we kind of like had to change course because we didn't actually know what we were going to do. We just thought this was going to be, some people like playing this, in bursts. Oh, let's turn that into a game. But oh wait, we didn't actually know which direction we were going to go with this, and we have to actually figure it out now. So like I think the kind of a lot of the mystery surrounding the game and the fact that it took so long for them to even like show it off is more harmful than God of War, because God of War is a completely different game, and there's only so many people. It's not going to come out to PC right away, and there's only so many people who own PlayStation. So you think about Xbox, well, it's not going to come to Switch, but you think about Xbox and PC. Like I don't know. I feel like there's still going to be enough people to play Skull and Bones, but I just see them as two different games for God of War to really be all that detrimental to Skull and Bones.
I think it's going to get buried in the marketing blitz. Like they're going to market the crud out of God of War, and is Skull and Bones going to be able to at least hold enough interest for the people that aren't already? Is Skull and Bones going to be able to claw out enough advertising space for the people that may be interested in it but don't yet know about it? Because keep in mind, there are always a ton of people that are going to be interested in the game that aren't as into the hobby as your listeners and us.
Let me ask you this: when for Ubisoft and Skull and Bones, does anybody like from Ubisoft ever say, if they know a big game's coming out or potentially going to come out during the holiday season, like a God of War, does anyone from Ubisoft ever contact Sony and be like, when are you? I guess Sony's not going to tell them when it's coming out because then they don't want that to get out. But is there ever any contact in between the studios so that they don't like, hey, when are you planning to release this so we don't put our game right next to yours?
I don't know if there's direct contact, but you generally get a good idea. You can also get a really good idea when you as a studio you make the contact to Sony or Microsoft to try and get certification slots. You don't just finish your game and send it off to Microsoft when you're ready. Like, you schedule with Nintendo also. You schedule with these companies for, I'm going to ship you the game that I want you to certify, and we're going to ship it to you on this date. And we know it's going to take a month, and you're either going to pass it or fail it. And so we're going to need to schedule a second certification about a month or 6 weeks after the first one. We may or may not use it. Because if you pass certification first time, then that's it. Microsoft or Sony handles sending the game off to duplication. You're not allowed to touch it again because you might disrupt something. You schedule those years in advance. And if you call up and you're like, yeah, you know what? I want to do my game and I want to certify it with Microsoft and Sony, and I want to do it, August 2023 so I can have it out for Christmas. And Microsoft and Sony are probably going to laugh at you and be like, we are so overloaded with testing in August that it's not going to happen. So then you're like, well, gee, what am I going to do? If I can get it in October, then maybe I can get it out right after Christmas. So you can get a general feel from what the certification schedule is like. Now, for these midsummer releases, if you look at it, if you go back and you look at a bunch of historical release dates, you'll see that there's a big push around Black Friday. There's a big push right after Christmas. And generally, there's a big push right around Gamescom, end of July, August timeframe. They're generally about every third of a year. There's a big release window. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out in the August timeframe. I mean, Saints Row, God of War, Skull and Bones is a little later, but that window is filling up with some big releases because they want to. Why they don't hold them till Christmas, I don't know. I can tell you for Saints Row was delayed so much, it's time to get it out there. It also lines up with the corporation's fiscal quarters because these publicly traded companies don't like to slip things over fiscal quarters because then they have to change guidance for their shareholders for how they think they're going to do the next fiscal quarter. So there's a lot of variables that play into it, not necessarily just, this other studio is going to release things. And then you have the constant churn of it's the Wild West on release dates on Steam. Like, Steam doesn't do that. Like, you submit a game to Steam, they're like, okay, we'll put it up on the store. Whenever you want.
All right. Jeff, we have a question from our Twitch chat. Rick wants to know, what is the first console that you worked as a dev on?
Xbox 360, Red Faction Guerrilla.
Great game.
All right. So Rick,
guess who's doing the destruction portion for the NVIDIA Omniverse engine?
Would that be you?
Who would that be?
The same person that wrote the destruction engine for Red Faction Guerrilla.
All right.
It's pretty amazing. He's one of the 12 or so Volition people that are over at NVIDIA.
All right, we're gonna move on.
There's a pipeline from Volition to NVIDIA, but I guess it just means that people from Volition are well respected in the industry, and NVIDIA's like, you know what? We need to get some of those people on our team.
I'll tell you right now, I was getting ready to look. I wasn't actively looking. And then I was chatting with an old Volition friend who's been at NVIDIA for about 5 years. We were chatting in Steam one night. He was playing Factorio, and we were just kind of shooting the crap. And he's like, hey, you should look at this, and sent me a link. And it was for a job description. And I read it all, and I'm like, hey, that's pretty interesting. He goes, don't you think the title of that job description should be Senior Jeff Hanna? I'm like, yeah, probably. He goes, good, because I've already referred you internally. And that's it. That's how it started. And about 4 weeks later, I was an NVIDIA employee.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yep.
All right. Well, speaking of joined teams, Sony has completed its $3.7 billion deal to acquire Bungie and welcome it into the PlayStation family.
Are we going to do what we've been playing?
I did.
Yeah, we did Jeff's.
Yeah, we did Jeff's.
You guys just play a bunch of Rocket League and that the capitalist game that Tricky's always playing.
A venture capitalist.
Yeah.
Which I finally completed.
See, we're done.
Yeah, Rocket League and whatever that is. Cookie Clicker for people that don't like Cookie Clicker.
Alex has been playing Assassin's Creed. I've been playing The Division. Yield has been playing Deep Rock Galactic. Fair enough?
Well, can I Can I say one thing?
Oh my God. Yes, sir.
Look. You want this?
I'm joking with
pieces
you
on this show.
I'm just joking with you, Alex. Go ahead.
No, he's not.
I really, I've been enjoying my time with Assassin's Creed, even though I do feel it's a little bloated as far as the missions go. But overall, I think they did a fantastic job with rebuilding the ancient Egyptian world. But I had been kind of expecting something out of this game when it comes. Tricky's talked about how you go to Valhalla actually when you play Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Well, there are some pretty awesome Egyptian gods, and I'll tell you what, I was expecting to see some of those gods in this game. How could you do ancient Egypt and not do the gods? Well, Ubisoft was like, Alex, my friend, we got your back because the Animus glitches, I just found these this week since our last show. You get to fight 3 30 to 40 foot tall Egyptian gods, including my boy Anubis. So like that was like something for me, like playing this game. I put the question out on Trophy Whores on the Facebook page, but it's just like it's one of those things. Like I ask people, it's like, do you feel like there's ever a thing in a game, like an aspect or like a mechanic or whatever, or a boss fight that you feel is directly tailored to you? Like they had a pipeline to your brain. And for me, like getting to fight, Sekhmet and Sobek and then also Anubis. I haven't fought Anubis yet, but I've fought the other two and beat them. But like being able to see the way they present those and have them included in the game as like a boss fight, like they're not super hard. Their attacks are easy to dodge, but like seeing them in the game and the way they're presented, I was just awestruck. And it was just kind of one of those moments. It's like, man, they made this exactly for me. Like it felt tailor-made for me. So I just really appreciated that. So I wanted to share my love of that with the Trophy Horse community because like we play games for enjoyment. We play games to have those moments. For me, the Shredder's Revenge, having Groundchuck and Dirtbag as a boss fight. We play games for those kind of moments, and that was just a moment in Assassin's Creed Origins where it's like, I went to the Animus Glitch and had no idea I was going to fight Sobek, a 30-foot, 40-foot alligator god, and you know what? When it happened, I was like, oh, this is what's happening. I was just, I just wanted to share that. I thought it was fantastic.
All right. And Rick in the Twitch chat reminded me that Yield's also been playing World of Warships.
I have World of Warships, Farm Simulator 19, Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, Rayman Legends, Deep Rock Galactic, Church in the Darkness, Rocket League, and Siphon Filter.
All right. Going back to the topic, yes, Sony has completed the purchase. Bungie on Twitter said, we are proud to officially join the incredible team at PlayStation. We're excited for the future of our company, and we are inspired to bring together players from all over the world to form lasting friendships and memories.
Yep.
All right. They also closed on their purchase of Haven, too.
Thank you for jumping the gun, but yes.
Well, I mean, we can lump these out. And again, like I understand that people like this company hasn't yet put out a game, and like you got Jade Raymond at the head of it, and she was a big part of the original Assassin's Creed game and what they got that series off the ground. But like people like dumping on this decision, it's like what you all don't understand is you're someone sitting in the peanut gallery who has not seen what they've done. I guarantee Sony has seen what they're making and said, and we're so impressed by it. They're like, yeah, we're buying that. So like, it's okay. Like I understand people aren't super thrilled about it, because they don't know, like what exactly they're going to put out. But again, when the company who has seen it is like, yeah, we're going to buy you guys immediately, like maybe don't. I just get tired of people shitting on stuff like that. Have faith. If you're willing to buy a $500 console from somebody or a $400 console, have faith that they're not going to make stupid decisions with their money.
All right. Yep. Moving on to another. Sorry, Rick just scared me in the chat.
Did he post a pic of a spider?
No, but he said fucking big ass spider in my game room. Tried to squash him and missed. He's gone behind a damn shelf now. Gonna spend the rest of the night looking over my shoulder for him. That's just freaking nightmares for me.
Rick, I was in a similar situation last night. I don't want to scare Tricky, but I'm gonna commiserate with my friend Rick here. And there was a spider. Didn't look particularly poisonous, so I think we're good. But there was one hiding over in the corner of our room by the window, and I was going to try to grab it, just kind of get rid of it, and ran away.
Just
burn the fire.
Just burn the house down.
I'm not going to do that in my house. I was just going to take some paper towels and grab it, but ran away, ran underneath a cat condo or behind a cat condo, and I don't know where that spider is now. It's free roaming everywhere.
All right, so Alex,
It's in your ear when you're asleep.
I mean, I woke up with a bug bite on my arm. I woke up with a bug bite on my arm, so it could have been that spider. Who knows? I hope it wasn't poisonous.
Well, if you start climbing the walls, it will know something.
If you hear a loud thud during this podcast and I stop talking, you know that I should have gone to the emergency room.
Oh God, you guys are giving me nightmares. Until developer,
you can't have nightmares when you're awake.
Until developer, that'd be a great name for a company.
Oh my God, I'm literally shaking right now.
Just don't hit your microphone and we'll be good. Don't mess up with the audio.
Make sure we get your audio by the end of the episode.
Until Dawn developer has been acquired by Nordisk Games. Alex, you posted this in the Facebook group, but this article is coming from IGN and is written by Ryan Dinsdale. Supermassive Games, the developer behind Until Dawn, the Dark Pictures anthology, and The Quarry, has been acquired by Nordic Games. Part of the larger Nordic film brand, the Denmark-based entertainment company owns a handful of other developers, including Avalanche Studios, and who's the creators of Just Cause. As reported by GamesIndustry.biz, Nordisk Games acquired 30.7% in Supermassive in March last year, but announced in a blog post that it now wholly owns the studio. Quote, having such a positive experience over the past year, it wasn't a difficult decision when Nordic Games wanted to explore increasing their investment. That comes from the CEO of Supermassive, Pete Samuels. We have an exciting, ambitious growth strategy for Supermassive Games, and Nordisk Games ownership only enhances that. I'm usually excited about where the security offered by this partnership and increased access to the expertise within Nordic Games will take us next. Excuse me. Now, Alex, you posed the question in the Facebook group that should Sony have bought them up when they made Until Dawn. So I have to step away from the microphone real quick, so I'm going to let you lead this conversation, Alex.
Happy to do it, Tricky. So, yeah, like, this is probably a great example of why I shouldn't be in charge of, like, buying things, at Sony or, like, buying studios. Because, I mean, like, you made a great game. Come on board. But, yeah, after playing Until Dawn, which was one of those really underrated PS4 games at a time, I was like, man, Sony should really buy Supermassive Games because they did some good work on this. And, since then, they've done the Dark Pictures anthologies, which haven't, always hit the mark as far as expectations goes. But they, The Quarry is said to be a fantastic game, and I think at the end of the year might get some consideration for Game of the Year. So, I mean, they've done really good work, and they proved to be a very reliable studio. But yeah, after one game, I was sold. I was like, let's bet the farm, go get Supermassive. So, I just kind of posed the question, like, should they have bought Supermassive, or is it one of those things that is, let's be more careful with our money? Because I know that at that point, Sony wasn't really acquiring many studios, and of course there wasn't really, Nintendo hardly ever seems to acquire anybody, and Microsoft, they hadn't bought Bethesda yet, so it wasn't really a period of just gobbling up studios at that point. So Jeff, as far, I don't know if you've had any kind of interactions with the people of Supermassive Games, but kind of what's your overall thoughts on that studio and kind of their game making abilities?
Now, is Nordisk Games a division of Novo Nordisk, the people that make the drugs?
I'm going to assume that's a joke, sir, because I would have to start to Google that. But
Novo Nordisk makes a diabetes drug. Is this are they aiming for the Asian gaming market with this?
You know what? We're all going to get it at some point, drinking all our Mountain Dew, with Master Chief on it. So,
right. Paula Deen ran all those cooking shows about put 18 pounds of butter in your meals, and then everyone got diabetes, and then she became a spokeswoman for Novo Nordisk, which seemed like double dipping to me. So every time I see the name of this company, that's all I can think about. I don't think they're related, but it's really weird. I don't know much about Supermassive. I definitely tweak the same way that you just were describing, as when Until Dawn came out, the industry was not in this period of massive consolidation that we see now. Big buyouts were not happening. I think at the time, we were all still reeling about billions paid for Minecraft. And everyone was like, that's the biggest acquisition ever. And granted, Microsoft's done amazing with Minecraft. There wasn't Microsoft grabbing Bethesda and Activision Blizzard and Sony buying Destiny and Nintendo not buying anybody. But it just wasn't, even THQ Nordic wasn't in the level of acquisitions that they have been recently. And so it was just of a different time, and you just didn't expect to make a blockbuster and get bought by a publisher. And the industry does this. There are these periods of contraction and massive acquisition where everyone sort of comes to the point that they expect that to be the case of making a blockbuster. And then there are long periods where that doesn't happen. And I don't know what causes those, but we just weren't there at that point in time.
Yeah, it's weird because like a lot of people look at Sony and Microsoft and the arms race between those two. And you have this, Supermassive being, the one company, Nordisk, had a minority share in it, and then they decided to, just acquire the company full out. And then you had, it was Square Enix selling off all their Western companies, their Western development studios. And, I can't remember who bought them, but it was a
going to NFTs. Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, I hear that, Square Enix needs a lot of help these days. They need to figure their stuff out. But it's not just Sony and Microsoft, it's all these other companies popping up, and I can't remember who bought all those studios. It was one company, and then you hear like all the stuff that they've acquired so far. I'll have to look that up. But so it's not just Sony and Microsoft. There's just massive consolidation going around the industry now. And is that a good thing or a bad thing, Jeff?
It's a thing. It's neither good nor bad. It's like I said, it's a cyclical thing. I think it would have been a very bad thing if both Sony and Microsoft made these acquisitions and immediately came out and said, we're taking these companies platform specific. Sony has said that that's not going to happen with Destiny. Like, Destiny is not going to become a PlayStation only game. Microsoft has been very clear that Bethesda can do what Bethesda wants, and if and when the acquisition closes, that Activision Blizzard can do what Activision Blizzard wants. Again, this goes back to Microsoft just wants to make games that are available to gamers. And Sony is starting to behave the same way. I mean, Sony's moving a lot of their catalog onto the PC, which is a good thing. So if it's going to give these companies the ability to have the funding to continue to make great games, it's wonderful. And I don't know of anybody at a Microsoft acquired studio, and I will be honest and open, there is now a Microsoft-backed Undead Labs satellite studio right across the street from Volition in downtown Champaign, Illinois. That's been there for about 6 months. And they have a person working in there that works for In Exile, which is a Microsoft-owned studio. And they may end up with one or two people there in that same building that work for Activision Blizzard. There's a big diaspora of game development companies in Champaign now, because I wasn't the only one that left at the end of last year. There's NVIDIA, there's Undead Labs, there's In Exile, there's Activision Blizzard, there's both Sony Bend and Sony Santa Monica. There's, and probably 3 or 4 others. There's EA people here now, because everyone's working from home. Now, Microsoft built that Undead Labs studio, and they're probably going to put the Microsoft Game Studio umbrella over it. But that just speaks to the depth and breadth that Microsoft has acquired. And Sony's doing the same thing. And I think if these companies were in a sellout position, or they needed the funding to make the next step, and they were open to being purchased by a bigger company, that's their business decision. And I think it's fine. It's not the 90s where EA would buy studios just to get IP and then shut the studios down. It's a totally different environment now.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing in games is it's less about, I mean, for Sony, very much it is still buy our console, but a lot of what we're going to see moving forward is buy into our streaming service, buy into our system. So how much of Sony saying, well, Destiny is going to be, I mean, I'm sure they had to say that to allow Destiny to be wherever they want it to be able to buy Bungie in the first place, or else Bungie wouldn't agree to it. But how much of is Microsoft and Sony being like, we're going to keep stuff multi-platform? Yeah, they'll make more money, but how much of it is we get to control whether or not this IP is free or a part of Game Pass or advantageous on Game Pass as compared to PlayStation Plus, or it's more advantageous to own it through PlayStation Plus than it is through Microsoft? And how much of it is them trying to avoid antitrust things? It's like, well, it can't be antitrust if it's all the same price and still available on all these consoles.
I think you need to look at it more as foundational moves for a consoleless future.
Which, I mean, Microsoft seems more prepared to make that jump than Sony or Nintendo. I still think Nintendo's screwed in that regard because they have no preparation for that whatsoever. So when people, I mean, yes, Sony is catching up to Microsoft, but when you look at Sony, it's like, man, Nintendo's even further behind.
Yes. But Nintendo's always been an odd duck. And their curated catalog of games designed for specific handheld hardware has really been Nintendo's bread and butter since the early 90s. Yes, the NES and the SNES and the Nintendo 64 and my favorite one, the GameCube, they were all outstanding consoles. But during all of those, the Game Boys were a far bigger revenue stream. And so Nintendo sort of has the mobile gaming market in the palm of their hands. And I don't know that gravy train is going to come screeching to a halt anytime soon. Because not having Wi-Fi and being able to slot an SD card in your Switch and play a game on an airplane or a bus or a car is a different thing than having a broadband connection and a web browser. But overall, I think a lot of the acquisitions and a lot of we're going multi-platform sort of thing is this push to make games infinitely accessible. And I think you have to look at that with a long view of maybe not the series and the PlayStation 5. Maybe we get one more, but at some point, the streaming hardware in the televisions and the broadband connections are going to be enough that it's just going to be more cost effective for these companies to build data centers than to build and try to sell hardware at retail. It would make them a lot more immune to things like the scalping and the chip shortage that we just saw, and we're still sort of coming out of. And so I'm sure all of those types of things weigh on these companies. And hardware is a risky flipping business. You really, I mean, look at all these Kickstarters that people do. Look at the Ouya from 10 years ago. You know, making hardware even for small batch things is not a fun endeavor. It takes teams of people, like huge teams of people to pull it off. Where making a data center isn't nearly as complex. So I think you have to look at the long view. You have to look at 10 years down the road, and that we're seeing the foundational moves to make that future more of a reality.
All right, Jeff, you said something earlier that wants me to bring up, get your opinion from a story we did 2 weeks ago. Are you aware that Spellbreak developer has been acquired by Activision?
I did not know that Activision was making acquisitions during the SEC approval process for their Microsoft buyout. No.
Okay, so a couple weeks ago, we reported that Spellbreak developer was acquired by Blizzard to work on World of Warcraft, and they're shutting down Spellbreak. So I just wanted to get your opinion, because I thought it was pretty shitty that Blizzard would buy the company and immediately tell them you have to shut down your game because you have to work on the next World of Warcraft expansion. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that, because you were saying before that how EA doesn't buy an IP just to shut down the studio. I mean, obviously they didn't buy the IP, or they bought the IP, but they're shutting down the IP and just taking all those employees and saying, now you got to work on what we've been working on. Forget what you've been working on for years.
Right. And there's three sides to every story. I would have to look into how Spellbreak was doing. Like was it maybe the company was amenable to a buyout to work on something that wasn't Spellbreak. Maybe they were done with it. Maybe it wasn't keeping the lights on, and so their choice was either to sell and work on something else or not exist. It could be that Activision Blizzard came to them and said, "Hey, we are going to buy you to work on this, and here's a gigantic bag of cash to do that." Making the assumption that it was they got bought and then were immediately told you're not going to work on this anymore it may not be the truth.
All right. Well, I just linked the article if you want to look at that in the Skype chat. But basically, it says the first line says Spellbreak developer will similarly be acquired by Blizzard to work on World of Warcraft, with a major consequence being that Blizzard-based Battle Royale will be shut down. Yeah. That's literally the first line of the article. So. All right, so...
Oh, before we move on, Tricky, I I want to look up. I didn't want to share. I looked up the company that bought all the companies or the developed studios from Square Enix. It was Embracer Group, who, as we talked about on the show, also owns Cook Media and Gearbox. So they buying up people.
Embracer owns Koch, which owns Deep Silver, which is a direct line to Volition. Just for honest and upfront, not that I work for them anymore. And they have turned Gearbox into the one thing you may not know, and this was very quiet. At the end of last year, they bought Perfect World and they bought Cryptic. And Cryptic does not report to Deep Silver, which has historically been the Koch Media North American publisher. Those two studios report to Gearbox, which was somewhat surprising to me. And I am wondering if Embracer is starting to diminish the Deep Silver name in North America, because honestly, historically, they haven't had a lot of well-known Deep Silver titles. Like Metro and Saints Row and Agents of Mayhem are kind of the big three, and then there's a lot of mid-tier stuff that comes out of that publisher. So I'm wondering if Embracer isn't going to start building Gearbox up more as a big North American publisher and not just a game developer.
All right. Going back to the topics at hand. Sony has introduced a new loyalty program called the PlayStation Stars. This is written by Ryan Dinsdale over at IGN. Sony has announced a new rewards program called PlayStation Stars that will allow players to earn points with real cash value. Announced on the PlayStation blog, the loyalty program will begin later this year, though Sony didn't say exactly when, and will be free to sign up. Players will be able to complete objectives with some simple as playing a game once a month to earn points that can be later redeemed on the PlayStation Store or for other rewards. The catalog of items may include PSN wallet funds and select PlayStation Store products, and members of PlayStation Plus will also receive points for purchasing items on the store, similar to the My Nintendo program on the Switch. Outside of the PlayStation-related rewards, players can also earn, quote, digital collectibles, end quote, that are, quote, digital representations of things PlayStation fans enjoy, including figurines of beloved and iconic characters from games and other forms of entertainment, as well as cherished devices that tap into Sony's history of innovation, end quote. Additionally, according to the Washington Post, the first player to get a platinum trophy in certain games will receive extra special reward, which no one else can get. It's not clear exactly how this works. There's no mention of it being within a local time zone, or it could be a territory race for the platinum rather than a global one. But PlayStation has promised it will crack down on any attempts to get the rewards through fraudulent means. So, Yield, I'm going to go to you first because I know you shared this in the Facebook group. What are your thoughts on this new PlayStation Stars loyalty program?
I kind of like when Sony does stuff, free stuff like this. I like how they're going to... We'll have to see how more of it unfolds, but I like the idea of how you can earn points and then turn it into either stuff from the store or funds in your wallet just for basically playing their games. The whole race for a platinum thing, while I think it's interesting, I also think that it does neglect a vast majority of the player base by doing that. But that's just a personal thing. Other than that, I think it's a cool idea.
Alex, your thoughts?
So is this replacing that Sony rewards system that you were able to earn by getting a certain number of like platinum trophies and whatnot? You could earn money on the PlayStation Network.
That I think was within that was a program based within the PlayStation card, the credit card. I don't think that was I don't think that was naturally within Sony's PlayStation ecosystem. I think that was just a perk of the credit card. But I do remember years ago, they had kind of like an auction where you could auction off your gold trophies for prizes. It didn't take them off your account, but like if you had 100 gold and I had 101 gold, I could bid 101 gold for that item, get a real life item, but then in the next auction I didn't have any more gold to auction off. I remember something like that.
I like that all the news about this, they like Sony is quick to dispel the there's like these are not NFTs, just so you all know these are not NFTs. And the fact that they had to come out and say that shows that the stuff included in this is close to NFTs. Like how close, I don't know because I haven't seen it yet. But Tricky, but based on your comment in the chat there, it doesn't seem like you're very happy about this.
No, that was something else.
Oh.
That has to,
I mean, like
that has to do with a Twitch streamer who sickens me is advertising for a certain video game.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, any loyalty program that you have where I can earn points or earn money back on your ecosystem just by playing your games, which I'm going to do anyway, is fine with me. I'm glad that Sony's like, hey, we're not doing NFTs because I don't understand NFTs, and even less so, I don't really understand why anyone would want to buy an NFT. I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I like the fact that Sony's like, you can earn money for your PSN wallet by playing games, which is something I already do. So,
Microsoft's had a loyalty point program on Xbox for years and years and years.
Well, I mean, Jeff, we know that Microsoft, as far as systems go, the infrastructure for their online services, that they have been well ahead of Sony in those regards.
Yeah, I've got no problem with the loyalty program at all. I mean, it's the race to a platinum thing bothers me because it's going to be open to exploitation, and it also means people are going to play the game to get through the game as fast as possible, not to necessarily enjoy the title. But that's their choice.
I would argue people already do that.
People, you're right. There are a certain group of people that do that. But are you catering to the minority with this platinum race, or are you actually doing something that is going to build a community? But Microsoft, I mean, if you have the app installed, you log onto your Xbox, and it'd be like, okay, turn in your weekly challenges for playing these games. It's been in there for a long time, and you build up Microsoft points. And it's nice because it is, in fact, Microsoft points, not Xbox points. So using Bing searches and various other things in Windows actually add to your point total. And then you can cash those points in for Game Pass subscription cards or various other things. And I've got no problem with it.
All right. Moving on.
Tricky, did you want to share your thoughts, sir?
I like loyalty programs, but I linked the wrong thing in the next. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I like loyalty programs, and I appreciate when somebody tries to do one, but I want to wait and see what actually is being announced before I give like full opinions on this. If they're giving us a chance to earn free games and stuff like that, great, awesome, but somewhere in me, I'm feeling like this is going to be a big letdown on the things that we can actually redeem.
Well, I'm sure they'll shoehorn it.
Average Geeks in the chat says Sony will 100% find a way to fuck this up. And Rick says you could literally save them up and buy consoles through Microsoft.
Yeah.
Well, and Average Geeks is right. If you've been a fan with Sony long enough, the saying amongst us gamers are they take 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. Yeah. So, as awesome as this sounds, Sony will find a way to Sony it up.
And Rick also says the day we lose consoles is the day I become a full-time retro gamer.
Okay.
That might be where the future's heading, Rick. We got it with Spotify. We got stuff like that with Spotify for music, Netflix, and other streaming services for movies and TV. It's coming for games too.
But that is also kind of my point. We all want to, at some level, be retro gamers, and the best way to be able to be retro gamers is for that stuff to be streamed. RetroArch is cool and all, but it's sort of a pain in the ass to keep going. But if I could just log on to a service like AntStream, I don't know if you guys have ever seen AntStream, you should look it up, and pay a monthly subscription fee and have access to an entire back catalog of 90s classic 16-bit games that stream to me, sign me up.
Well, you're talking about retro games. That actually leads into our next article here. And Konami is reinstating delisted Metal Gear games for the series' 35th anniversary. As reported by VGC, Konami's Japanese Twitter account posted why can't I say that word? Commemorate the anniversary.
Commiserate?
Commemorate.
The anniversary, and announced to fans seemingly soon that once again we'll be able to play temporarily suspended entries. Quote, the Metal Gear series, released on July 13th, 1987, celebrated its 35th anniversary today. We are prepared to resume sales of the titles that have been temporarily suspended. And the games that were suspended were Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty HD on the PS3 and Vita, Snake Eater HD on the 3 and the Vita, Metal Gear Solid HD on the 3, the collection on the Vita and the PS Now, the HD edition, which was on the 2 and 3, which was on the 360, Snake Eater 3D, which was on the 3DS, Substance, which was on GOG.com, and Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 HD for Shield TV on NVIDIA Shield.
Okay, trivia time.
Okay.
On which platform did the original Metal Gear game appear?
The MSX.
Yep.
Which was only in Japan.
Yes, but someone just recently, like within the past 6 months, ported it to the Commodore Amiga.
I know that answer, and I kind of feel like I cheated a little bit, but I don't think it's cheating. I literally just watched a 4-hour YouTube video of the history of Metal Gear.
Yeah.
And that's how I know that.
Yep.
And Rick had the right answer in the chat, too. I don't know if because he's on a delay, I don't know if he got it before I did or not.
Interesting to me that wasn't one of the titles they had in the lineup. Like, they're not giving you a way to play the original emulated anywhere.
I kind of find it weird, and I mean, I guess I kind of understand that we never got like an HD version of the original Metal Gear games.
No, and the NES version isn't nearly as good as the original MSX version.
Right.
It's approachable and it's playable, but it's not as good at all.
Oh, wow, because I thought the first Metal Gear was amazing. So, that must have been really good.
It's better on the MSX. It really is.
Yeah. So, if you're a Metal Gear fan, I think this is kind of leading into news that we're going to get a new Metal Gear game as well. Although that wasn't said or mentioned or even referenced at all. But you gotta think that Konami's not going to let Metal Gear die.
No.
So. All right. I'm going to.
Doesn't mean that they'll do good things with it, though.
Well, I mean, look what they did with the last one, Survive.
I don't know. I didn't look at it.
Literally, the best thing that company has done is announce a collection of Ninja Turtles games from the NES and SNES days.
All right. I'm going to skip our next topic because it actually doesn't apply to anymore. Alex, you put this in the chat, but it's kind of outdated now because it was wrong. So I'm going to skip that.
Fair enough.
All right. So at this point, we are going to go to our Facebook group and have some questions. But before we do that, you know what we got to do.
Time to check my social media, yeah.
All right. So, Jeff, as is customary with our guest, do you like that sound or do you hate it?
I'm going to call Disney and report you. Just to put a bullet in it finally.
So you don't like it?
Not really.
Okay.
But there's some bad blood with me and The Lion King and a date in college, so it hits a nerve.
You know,
Oh, there you go, Tricky. You done did it.
that's gonna have to be a Patreon exclusive episode where we talk to Jeff about his hatred of The Lion King. All right, so coming from Facebook, there's actually 2 threads. So the first question is coming from David Bray. Says, I know they had servers for them, but how hard would it be for Sony or developers to put a game back online like Warhawk or Mag for the new Plus/Game Pass? So I guess this is kind of directed towards you, Jeff. How hard would it be to put those servers back online?
Sorry. It depends. It depends on what servers they were written for. If they were written for a bank of PCs, it's probably an issue. Is it something that you could spin up a bunch of AWS virtual servers and have connected to? Then it's a money issue. And how much money are they going to how much money are they going to make off of one of these older games to pay to have the infrastructure running month after month? And I don't know what the break-even point on those are. I don't know what it costs to run, to call up like a Google or a Microsoft Azure or an Amazon Web Services and have them spin up a bunch of servers like that for you. So I don't know. It's not a technology issue. It's a money in the pocket issue at the end of the day.
All right. Let's go into other thread, which I also started by David Bray, which got a lot of comments on the Facebook group. So I'm going to go through the answers before I go to your answers, gentlemen. He wants to know, here's a question for everyone. What weapon in any game, movie, or TV show would you love to have and be real? For him, it has to be a lightsaber. So Matt G responds by saying, the Portal gun. And he says, before anyone says it's not a weapon, you haven't seen the damage I do to my partner in Portal 2. Garrett says Spider-Man's web shooters. Dupe says he likes the Blades of Chaos. Rick says Lucille, but no consequences of using it. Homer says, if not a lightsaber, I'd like to go with the air taser from Siphon Filter. Harry says the BFG 9000, which I think is a Doom weapon.
Yep.
Okay. Mark Frazier comes back and says the plasma cutter. Andrew says the plasma cannon from Space Marine. Alex Gonzalez says the Master Sword from Zelda. Curtis says the dildo bat from Saints Row the Third, but seriously, I've always wanted a lightsaber. Yield, I'm going to skip your answer because you can say it live. And JT says, give me this weapon and the body build to boot, which didn't give me the name, but it's from One Piece. So I don't know what the name of the weapon is. So we'll go, we'll start with you, Yield. You say your weapon is what?
I would say a lightsaber. Either the dual one, like Maul had, or I would have two of them, like Ahsoka or Starkiller, depending on which Star Wars you're going with. Like Ahsoka or Starkiller.
Sorry, I was bringing up a thing from Rick. Alex, your weapon.
So, I'm a big Star Wars fan too, and I was kind of going to riff off of that. But I've always thought it would be really cool if you had like Wolverine's claws, but each claw was a lightsaber. So you would just have like these lightsaber claws. So I'm going to go with
General
that.
Grievous.
Yeah. I mean, General Grievous had like the spinning propeller ones that he had, but I'm talking about like claws that didn't spin around and you could just stab you. I don't know. That'd be really awesome. And I've always thought it'd be really cool. So I can't really think of a weapon more awesome than a lightsaber, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, some of the Ratchet and Clank guns, some of like the resistance guns like the auger, which you could use to shoot through walls. Yeah, like super cool. But when it comes down to it, just for the elegance and the simplicity of it, the lightsaber is kind of hard to beat.
Tricky.
Sorry, I was on mute. I muted because I was watching something online. Rick says in the chat, I feel like we'd all be cutting our arms off with lightsabers.
Probably, yeah.
So
hey, that never stopped anybody from using fireworks, shooting off fireworks, even though there's many firework-related injuries around the United States July 4th.
Rick follows that up by saying, thinking we're all pro with them, but then suddenly your head goes off. Jeff, your weapon from any TV show, video game, or media.
Okay, one would be the North American P-51 Mustang from any World War II flight simulator. But more importantly, the Sword Explosion from the Borderlands 2 DLC, Tiny Tina's Attack on Dragon Keep. Because a shotgun that shoots ricocheting swords is just the best weapon ever.
Okay. I was expecting Neil to come back with something.
No. I'm imagining a shotgun that shoots ricocheting swords.
If you have not played the Borderlands 2 DLC, Tiny Tina's Attack on Dragon Keep, you need to.
Oh, I can't play Borderlands because it's first person, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay. All right.
I'm trying to think of my answer. Because I was going to go with the dildo bat, but...
Those are real. You can buy those. You can find them used on eBay sometimes.
All right, so Curtis, go on eBay.
Volition, well, more importantly, THQ made full-size purple dildo bats with baseball bat handles and surgical-grade latex and sent them off to reviewers in the run-up to Saints Row 3 being released. You can find reviews on YouTube where people reviewed the dildo bat before they reviewed the game. And every now and then you'll find somebody clearing out their old gaming journalism box of stuff and selling one on eBay.
And just how big were they?
They were length of a baseball bat plus some, probably 4 feet. Like, it was full size.
Rick says there only be you could only find them used. I'm not going to go deep into that.
That's what she said.
All right, so those are our questions. Going back to the agenda, I'm going to preface this by saying the views and opinions that are going to said on this show are not of mine or any other person or the person speaking it. Because I have a feeling that this is where it's going to go. Coming from IGN and written by Adam Bankhurst, former EA CEO says devs who don't focus on microtransactions are the, quote, biggest fucking idiots, end quote. He has said this. He is now the CEO of Unity Technology. His name is John
Riccitiello.
There you go. And he spoke to PocketGamer.biz about this topic following the announcement of Unity and Iron Source's upcoming merger. When asked about the pushback that some developers have given regarding implementing getting money through microtransactions.
Monetization.
Thank you. Sometimes I just cannot say words. Quote, Ferrari and some of the other high-end car manufacturers still use clay and carbon knives. It's a very small portion of the gaming industry that works that way. Some of these people are my favorite people in the world to fight with, but they're the most beautiful, pure, brilliant people. They're also some of the biggest fucking idiots. I've been in the game industry longer than most anybody. Getting to the gray hair and all that, it used to be the case that developers would throw their game over the wall to the publicists and Salesforce with literally no interaction beforehand. That model is baked into the philosophy that a lot of art forms and medium, and it's one I am deeply respectful of. I know their dedication and care. But this industry divides people between those who still hold the philosophy and those who massively embrace how to figure out what makes a successful product. And I don't know a successful artist anywhere that doesn't care about what their player thinks. This is where the cycle of feedback comes back, and they can choose to ignore it, but choose to not know it at all is not a great call. I've seen great games fail because they've turned the compulsion loop into 2 minutes when it should have been an hour. Sometimes you would even notice the product difference between a massive success and a tremendous fail. But for this tune-in and what it does to the attrition rate, there isn't a developer on the planet that wouldn't want that knowledge, end quote. So, gentlemen, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to start with you, Yield. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I'm a little confused at what he's saying. Can you dumb it down for me?
You can't, because he's confusing two different things in one paragraph.
See, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, Jeff.
He completely conflates the idea of the compulsion loop and monetization. And he flips back and forth between what he's talking about in multiple sentences within those couple of paragraphs, and it comes across as he thinks that the compulsion loop has to be monetized, or you're an idiot. And the thing is, he also comes across as not understanding what he's talking about.
Which may be why he's no longer at EA.
You want to buckle up for some stories?
Sure.
The floor is yours,
We
Jeff.
were promised this, and I've been looking forward to it.
Just for the record, Rick in the chat says, "Oh shit, it's about to kick off," and then he says, "I mean, he's not wrong. You want money, then put microtransactions in, and some fool will buy them."
Okay, that is true. That is true. I've been in the gaming industry longer than this guy, and I can tell you that with a fact because Electronic Arts bought Kesmai, and I had already been working at Kesmai, and then this guy, John Riccitiello, comes out to Virginia from the West Coast. Before he became the EA CEO the first time, he was the CEO of Sara Lee Bakery. This is his pedigree. And he comes out to Kesmai. For those of you in the audience that are younger, this whole concept of games as a service and logging on and downloading a client and playing massively multiplayer games that run on big servers, Kesmai was doing this on proprietary pre-internet services like Genie in the late 80s. They basically they developed all of the things that we take for granted now for client-server massively multiplayer games. And Kesmai got onto AOL, and then EA wanted to bust into games, and they realized that to get a game on AOL, they had to come through us because they had the contract, so they instead bought us. And this previous CEO of Sara Lee flies out to the company that all but invented the concept of massively multiplayer games and starts off a presentation to a bunch of mid-20s game developers with making an online game is a lot like making a quiche. And we all reacted just like that because, one, none of us fucking ate quiche, and two, what the fuck does that mean? And it went downhill from there. I was working on a multiplayer Battletech game, and it was in closed beta, and he spent the day playing it and talking it up really positively, and then there was an all-hands meeting, and I was the art director. And in the meeting, he's again blowing sunshine up our backside about how good Battletech is. And so I put my hand up and I said, "That's wonderful, but we're less than 3 months from this game going live, and no one from Electronic Arts has approached me about an advertising campaign. We're too late to get in magazines at this point because it's a 3-month lead time. There's no web presence. I've not seen anything about advertising for this." And before his handler could run out on stage, John Riccitiello answers with, "Well, at EA, we only advertise the good games."
Wow.
Ow! Peace out!
Yeah. And again, a room full of game developers just looked at him with blank stares on their face. And his handler ran out and tried to do damage control. I have no respect for this person. He's been the CEO of EA twice, and both times he's done some questionable things, and the quality, the overall market share of EA has dropped. I think the last time he was CEO of EA, their overall market value dropped by close to 60%. And he has his own private equity firm called Elevation Partners. And when he was CEO of EA the first time, he spent his private equity firm owned Pandemic, and he spent EA money to enrich himself to buy Pandemic from his own investment firm to make it part of EA, and then he closed it.
Bastard! Pandemic was amazing!
Yeah, and so then Elevation Partners bought a controlling interest of Unity, and that's how he got to be the CEO of Unity. And I don't know that he really understands the gaming industry. I've never had a feeling for close to 3 decades now that he's ever been anything good for the industry.
I don't even want to buy Sara Lee bread, so I don't know why he thinks he's such a hotshot.
Wow, I'm speechless. I have no idea how to respond to that.
Like,
Well, that answers that question pretty good.
how are you the leader of a company, and you just come out to people working for you and say, "Yeah, we're not," and just basically slap them in the face and say, "We're not going to promote this game because we feel like all the work that you put in isn't making a good game." Especially when you come from outside the video game industry and you know very little. Like, how does that just pass through your lips without you thinking about it? And I mean,
that's almost as bad as the former Xbox guy going when they were doing the DRM for the Xbox One, and they said, "What what do you say to the gamers that can't get online? He goes, well, we have a product for you. It's called the 360.
Yeah, that was a dark time. Yep. Yeah.
Oh my god.
And so then this paragraph, and Tricky read the whole quote as it exists in the article.
Correct.
And then they come out a day later and said that his comment about these game developers being, quote, fucking idiots was taken out of context. No, it wasn't, because we have the entire context, which is this scatterbrained couple of paragraphs.
All right, well, you brought that up, and that's actually another article I have in here. He did issue an apology on Twitter and clarified his comments regarding those devs. He says, quote, and this is multiple tweets, I want to talk about both what I said in the interview and my follow-up tweet. I'm going to start with an apology. My word choice was crude. I am sorry. I am listening, and I will do better. What I can do, perhaps, is provide more on what I was thinking when I did the interview, what I would have said if I had taken great care. First, I have great respect for the game developers. The work they do is amazing. The creativity can be incredible, whether on a AAA console, mobile, or indie game designed to be played by millions, or a creative project that a game was made just for the sheer joy of it. Second, one thing I've seen is that the most game devs work incredibly hard and want people to play their game, to enjoy it, and when appropriate for players to engage deeply. For the game devs I have worked most closely with, there is often anxiety about whether players will love the game and appreciate all the work and love that's went into making it. Third, sometimes all a game developer wants is to have a handful of friends enjoy the game, art for art's sake, and art for friends. Other players want money to buy the game or game items so they can make a living. Both of these motivations are noble. Fourth, what I was trying to say and clearly failed at saying is that there are better ways for game developers to get an early read on what players think of their game, to learn from their feedback, and if the developer wants to adjust the game based on this feedback. It's a choice to listen and act or just to listen. Again, both are very valid choices. If I had been smarter in choosing my words, I would have just said this. We are working to provide developers with tools so they can better understand what their players think, and it's up to them to act or not based on this feedback. Anyway, that's it, a lot of words, and a sentence I wish I never said, end quote.
That sounds really good damage control that somebody wrote for him to say.
Yes, but let's keep in mind that the reaction to all of this is because Unity is merging with an advertising platform. And he's talking about telemetry. Yes, developers want to know how players are playing the game. And when you play a game on either the Xbox or the PlayStation, or a lot of times PC games, a lot of information gets back to the developer about what you're doing. You know, how long are you spending in this quest? What are you doing over there? Telemetry is great, but he's conflating telemetry with everyone's upset that we're merging with an advertising platform. And 2 days ago, I was talking about monetization. And so there's a lot of spin control in that apology, and it really doesn't at all talk about the monetization and the advertising aspect and the history of the advertising company they're merging with, which was blacklisted from Windows in Microsoft Defender because it pushed malware. There's a lot of concerns in the Unity developer community about this. And I will tell you, between the time that article came out and that apology, Twitter exploded with Unity developers discussing about what engine they might want to switch to. And so it's huge damage control.
Yeah, because somebody else tweeted, going back to last night, developer Tim Soar tweeted that he was, quote, destroying the Unity we all loved, end quote.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm just in that mass of text. I just didn't, hear everything. But did he actually address everything he said in the original, in the original quote? Because it seems like he was almost talking about not two different things, but two things that it was like he was trying to give a really eloquent answer and trying to cover up what he said, but he also didn't go back to cover everything he said in the original quote. Did I miss something, or is that kind of...
He apologized for being disparaging. He built up the fact that Unity needs game developers, and then he talked about telemetry and understanding what your players want. He really glossed over the fact that all of this came about because of the news that right after a bunch of layoffs, Unity is doing a $4.5 billion stock acquisition of an advertising platform. And the Unity developers are concerned. They're like, wait a second, are you adding anything new to the engine? Because you just laid off a bunch of workers and now you're pushing advertising. And so he didn't really address that aspect of it, no.
Yeah, because in the original quote, he was talking more about, just the monetization of everything. And he just didn't really. I understand that people say things they shouldn't, or that, people make mistakes. But this guy, he's not a young guy. Even back when he was like at EA, he had to be in his 40s, probably his 50s, as it were. And, he obviously he said something to Jeff and Jeff's team that was very disrespectful. But when you're the head of a company, when you're the CEO and you've had years of experience, you're like, you want to come out and say, oh, I've been in the video game industry longer than most. You would figure by now that you would, as a representative of the company, the head of the company, that you wouldn't come out and say fucking idiots in an interview. Like, you would have more thought behind it than that. So, him saying, I need to do better, he's not wrong, but also, why was that something that came out of your mouth in the first place?
I would love to know, and I guess, they have investors. They Unity IPO'd, I believe. So I guess you could look this up. I'd like to know what their revenue is, because we're less than a year out from when they spent almost $4 billion to buy Weta Digital in New Zealand. And what did that add to the engine, right? And what does this advertising platform add to the engine for people that they want to make games? Like, there's a lot of concern about the weird acquisitions and not a lot of new features being added to Unity. And it's a fair criticism.
Well, given some of the work that he did at EA, as far as the losses and the spending of money, you have to question when he's spending money and things aren't on things that aren't going to be fruitful to your products. I guess that when I hear him talk the first time, one, he was insulting, but also it's like he tries to come back and it's just like, okay, but you didn't cover everything that you said in the first place, so how can I take you serious? I don't know. I know Dead Space came out when he was the CEO of EA. I know some good things happened under him at EA. That may not have always been his decision, but I hear stuff like this and it's like, how do you expect me to take you seriously as the leader of a company when you can't even, like, when you're going back and covering up your tracks from before, you can't even cover up all the tracks. I don't know.
Do you have some comments you want to make?
I just, like I said from the initial, he confused me by what he was talking about initially, and then Jeff clarified why I was confused, because the guy's a moron.
All right, well,
that's putting it nicely.
Well, kind of like what he said is that, with his wrong words of saying that people that don't import microtransactions are the biggest fucking idiots. We've had conversations on the show about microtransactions. Obviously, as Rick pointed out in the chat, if you put microtransactions in your games, there are going to people that buy them.
Oh, absolutely.
And
look at mobile games.
I think it's fair to say that microtransactions are a decent, if not good, revenue stream inside the games.
If done correctly, yes.
So, I'm not in any way trying to justify what he said, but I think the point he was trying to make is that if you're not putting microtransactions in your games, you're going to fail.
That's not true.
Well, I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying I think that's the point he was trying to make.
And yes, that's the impression I got. And for certain types of games, I can see that argument, but he still made it badly. What the mobile Diablo game is doing $1 million a day plus right now on microtransactions. Microtransactions are certainly more amenable in the mobile space than they are in the console and the PC space, and Unity is used a lot for mobile games, so I can see where that is sort of coming full circle, but he still didn't discuss it eloquently.
Absolutely not. I mean, what is your overall opinion on microtransactions in games, Jeff?
If you want to do it, do it. I don't know. No, that's not true. I have certainly bought some ship cosmetics for Sea of Thieves, and there's a couple other games where I've bought some, microtransaction stuff. But I generally don't do that. I don't do a lot of on my phone mobile gaming because I just don't like the buy this pack of 50 gold right now to get another turn today, or wait 24 hours to get a free turn tomorrow sort of thing. And that's just me. It just doesn't resonate with me. But I am of an era where I slotted cartridges into wood-paneled, plug into your old school television consoles, and I bought computer software in Ziploc bags. I am of a different era of gaming, and it just wasn't a thing that was there when I started gaming, and so it just never resonated with me.
All right, because, I mean, other forms that developers and publishers have tried to do is, several years ago, we had the online pass for a used game.
Mm-hmm.
That went by the wayside once we started getting the microtransactions. I think that's fair to say. That was
a lot of games still do season passes. Sea of Thieves is surviving greatly on season passes, and they're doing a good job with it. And you can play but you can play most of it without throwing down for the season pass. But if you want to get the ultimate payout for doing all of the quests and the trials for the season, you do have to buy the season pass.
All right. Well, you're saying season pass. I was talking about the online pass, like when the PS3 days,
right.
where if I gave you a copy of a PS3 game,
you had to buy a key.
You had to buy a key to play online.
Right.
And
we've moved away from that.
Right.
But there's also other games like EVE Online, which again I've never played. Well, I played it when it first came out. And that's probably almost 20 years ago now, where you can you can convert in-game currency to real-world currency, and so you can actually pay your subscription every month just by playing the game.
I think Fortnite does that now, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You can earn V-Bucks.
And the same thing in Marvel's Avengers. All the characters are released for free, but if you want to unlock their track, you had to pay $10. But all that currency to unlock that track, you could also earn in the game by doing the tracks for all the 6 original characters. So right. And then as you do the new characters that come out, they have it, and then if you just keep doing all the work, you never have to put another dime into the game. So. I mean, there are companies that do it right.
Yes.
Yes.
I am all for things like that. Like VR was kind of a flash in the pan again, although it's kind of stuck more this time. Microtransactions, loot boxes, these things generate a lot of discussion. And just to remind everybody, and for those that are new listeners and haven't heard me on the show before, I am a member of the advisory board that plans Game Developer Conference every year. I still do that now. And you get a lot of discussion about these things, like should we even allow these talks? And I'm always of the mind of yes, because one of the interesting things about games relative to most any other media, books, film, television, music, is that games can try these experimental things. And sometimes they stick. Sometimes they stick in the mainstream. Sometimes they stick off in a niche area. But games exist in this space where the idea of the medium of games is constantly evolving. And we should be trying these things because that means that the hobby will constantly evolve, and an evolving thing will stay fresher than a stagnant thing. Like, if you went into a movie theater and you watched the first 10 minutes of a movie and then somebody came around with a collection basket and you had to throw in $1 to see the next 10 minutes of the movie, you're going to get up and leave. It's just not going to work because movies are an established medium with a certain expectation of the user. Games, we can push those expectations over time. And so as an industry, we should push them. And it's throw a bunch of things at the wall and something's going to stick. And that's great. It also doesn't mean that what sticks wipes out everything that came before it. It just means that now we have another avenue. So if a developer wants to put microtransactions in, I'm not going to say no, because there are players that are going to gravitate to that. Perfect. You have a revenue stream. You found something. Excellent. The games industry is stronger because of that.
All right.
I definitely think that there are some games where microtransactions are better suited for. But I think
absolutely.
His point of everyone should be considering, like, these streams of monetization. I mean, if it makes sense, yes, but just over monetizing everything to make more money, you're going to burn people out. And as far as like, as someone who spends a lot of money in games, I don't want everyone just from the outset to be like, well, how can we add extra monetization? Because if you think that people cut pieces of games that we would have gotten as a total package before and then sell those later to you as a DLC, forcing people or telling everyone that they need to have, microtransactions within their games, everyone needs to sell cosmetics and costumes and stuff like that. That's not something I think that people who buy games want to hear. Like, it can make sense, yes, and if it makes sense and it's good, I will buy it. But if you're just over monetizing everyone, you're going to burn people out and you're going to turn people off because it becomes across as greedy, and people don't like that.
God, imagine EA if they were to do something like this. You spend $70 on the game, you pop it in, you hit start, and to play Chapter 1, it's going to cost you $5.
Yeah. But also, let's remember, we're not 4 years out from when the entire industry was of the mind that everything had to be Battle Royale. Right? And we all know that didn't go anywhere. But there was a lot of money and a lot of big studios trying to fit PUBG's gameplay into anything they could.
Yep.
Okay, fine. Try it. I don't care. You're going to succeed or you're going to fail, and that's not for me to say. If I had started to cycle back to the beginning of the show, if I had started playing Weird West, and it was going to be like, great, you played one character. Now to play the second character, you have to give us another $2.99. I would have stopped the game right there. Now, that doesn't mean everybody would have stopped the game right there, but I just don't gravitate towards those games. I like a game I can pick up and I can play to completion and I can put down. I'm fairly old school in that, probably, but I'm also fairly old. And so that's fine. There are games that I won't play. I don't care, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that those games are awful. It just means that I'm not their audience, but there's definitely an audience for them.
All right. Correction in the chat. I said earlier that the online passes were stopped due to microtransactions. Rick pointed out it was actually stopped when they started charging for PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live. So that's a correction. All right. I think it's time to wrap up the show, unless you guys have any further comments.
I mean, I have comments on a lot of things.
Well, I mean, Rick is saying in the chat that he does love when you're on the show. I'm trying to find his actual quote here. Hold on. He says he enjoys having you on the show because you get a lot of insight, great stories, and insight into the gaming world. And he says you were also a plus up for the usual riffraff we have on the show.
Well, thank you very much.
I also want to point out that Rick has been a guest host on this show very recently, so he's also thrown himself under the bus there as well.
And Rick right now, because he's from the UK, is trying to figure out our money system. He didn't know that a penny was actually referred to as also as a cent. So now he's asking me what a $50 is and what a nickel and a dime is. So
a nickel's a nickel, a dime's a dime, and what the fuck's a quid?
A nickel and a dime is a EA monetization strategy under Jock and Riccitiello. That's what that is.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, Jeff, can you tell us any more stories about the industry, or?
I mean, I could tell you we'd be here till 9, but I could tell you the time that I was at a Sony party at E3 and Andy Dick, the actor, had just gotten fired from News Radio, and I was in a green room on the Sony movie studio lot with him.
I can't stand Andy Dick, so.
Well, I mean, yeah. I have a ton of stories. It's been an amazing. I started in '95. It's been an amazing number of decades. But at the same, and I'll admit I did a lot of soul searching when I took the job with NVIDIA, because it means I'm not necessarily directly in the games industry anymore. That doesn't mean that at some point I won't be back. But it's an industry that I am going to pay attention to and be as close to a part of as I can for as long as possible, because it's been everything I've done since college, and it's been very good to me.
Rick says a quid is a pound, and he also wants to know, Jeff, have you ever met Bill Gates?
I have not, but my mom has an autographed picture of Bill Gates because my brother worked at Microsoft and managed to ask Bill Gates' secretary if he would sign a headshot for my mother.
All right. I don't know where that came from, Rick, but that's a good question, apparently. All right, so Jeff, now that you've left, like you just referred that you technically not in the game industry, I mean, I know you said you're basically doing the same thing you were doing at Volition that you're now doing at NVIDIA, but and excuse my ignorance, but aren't you basically now developing the graphics cards that will go into future consoles and future, not you developing directly, but have a hand in what our future consoles and our future PCs are going to run like?
No, I'm nowhere near that.
Okay.
That's the smarties. I'm not a smarty.
Don't say that. You're very smart.
NVIDIA has a 3D engine called Omniverse. It's not targeted at games currently. It's targeted more at manufacturing and industrial level. And I work on a portion of Omniverse. I work on a program called View, which basically is, there's a couple of different apps. Create, if you're at all familiar with Unreal, Create would be Unreal Ed. View is, I want to load up what somebody made in Create and look at it, and I want to be able to take some measurements. I want to be able to write some markup on the screen. I want to be able to present whatever somebody has made for this industrial application type of thing. It is at its core, it's a 3D engine, and so it uses a lot of the same technology. And for those of you that know me, and I've talked about this on the show, for 12 plus years now, I've run technical artist roundtables at GDC every year. And a lot of the discussion early on was, how do we lie on our resume because no one knows what a technical artist actually is? And then the role got established, and then education started teaching the role, and I've consulted with a number of universities. But then it was 5 years ago that Microsoft had a job posting for a technical artist for the Microsoft Photos team. And suddenly it hit me that these things that we call game engines are used everywhere. And so the concept of being a technical artist isn't necessarily limited to working on games. It's your role is to better facilitate the development of artist-facing tools and communicating with programmers to make sure that the artist's voice is understood. And so when the opportunity came for me to step next to the gaming industry, it shook me a little bit, but at the same time I realized that I am all about this, and I've been talking about this for years and encouraging others to do it, so it makes sense for me to do it. So I'm still developing artist-facing tools. I'm still developing creation tools to make digital assets. It's just those digital assets aren't necessarily going to end up in a game, but they are going to end up in a very high-powered 3D engine that runs on consumer graphics cards and runs on PCs. And so it's still the same ideas. It's just the end result isn't an entertainment product. It's a manufacturing product.
Okay. And I say that just because I hear what you're saying and just trying to process it all.
I know, and I process it a lot too. A lot of Omniverse is like rocket science from 20 years in the future, and every day I learn something new about it. And as somebody who has, when I went to college, I went to a program that had the word technology in the title of it. I am way into technology. Games have been the forefront of technology for a very long time, but now there's some other different forefronts, and so I get pushed harder every day now than I have in a long, long time, and I learn something new every day. And if it's only one thing new every day, I probably needed to do more that day. And so I'm super happy with where I am. So
now, you've been in the industry for what?
Since 95, officially, but I was also doing some game development work when I was still in college. So more like 93.
So, as your day-to-day goes on, obviously when you were a dev over at Volition and obviously your new role, how often are you taking a class or doing something to learn about the new technology, or is it all you're learning just all hands-on and you learn as you go?
It's hands-on, it's being presented, and we didn't really get into this tonight, and that's fine. Volition used to be a studio where they jumped at the hard problems. Red Faction Guerrilla pushed me harder than I have ever been pushed because of what everyone knew the end goal needed to be, and also everyone knew that no one else had ever done it before. It's jumping at things like that. It's being pushed in my career and being given the latitude to be like, well, I don't know how to do that yet, but I understand that you're going to let me go figure it out. It's keeping my finger on a lot of websites and going to conferences. I learn so much every year at GDC just by being there. And so it's just not necessarily sitting down and taking a class, but making sure that I am within the community and within the industry and talking to other people that are doing things, because somebody's always coming up with a novel solution to a common problem. And it's just sucking it all in. It's a fire hose, and it's a wonderful, nerdy, geeky fire hose.
All right. Alex or Yield, do you have any questions for Jeff before we let him go?
No,
I had one like a week or so ago, and it left me. I think we may have covered it, actually. But, yeah, I had one, and I thought it was a pretty good one, and I couldn't remember it.
Oh, so what do you do? Jeff was coming on this week, you thought of a question, and I forgot it?
Well, I thought of it, actually, like a couple of weeks ago when you said, Jeff's going to be on at the end of the month. And I'm like, all right, and I thought of something that had to, it was video game related and everything. And I thought it was actually a pretty good one. I want to think maybe it had to do with the new Plus or anything, but I'm not for sure. And it left me. I was trying to think of it the other day. I should have wrote it down.
All right, Alex, do you have any questions?
No, my only question is when can we have him back? Even though we just got done podcasting with him, I need it's like a drug. I need that next hit. Jeff Hanna is just so good when he comes on the show that when's the next time?
I'm here. We can make it work. We can figure it out.
All right. So
I'll come on the show whenever I can.
Yeah, well, I explained to the guys, like, we have dates booked up until October right now.
Yeah, I know. You put that list out. That's an impressive list.
But I'm sure a couple of our guests wouldn't mind you coming on the show with them. I know Daryl has been hounding me to get you on his show.
Maybe we should discuss at some point soon getting on your Twitch stream and doing some co-op Saints Row.
That sounds like a plan as well.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that offline.
And the other thing, and I'll put this out publicly, I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it, because I think you've privately answered it to Daryl, but Daryl's having some problems with the Agents of Mayhem servers.
I believe they got shut down.
Did they get shut down?
I believe Koch and Deep Silver shut them down and didn't make an announcement about it. I believe they're done.
Ouch.
That's not good. All right. Because he said that he can't get the platinum because the servers are no longer, or he's having problems with the servers. So
yeah, here's an article from The Gamer from 2 days before Christmas. I'll post it in the chat and you can share it with the community. It's talking about the fact that they just kind of got shut off. So, yeah.
Okay. We won't dive more into that. I just think that's pretty shitty that somebody does that.
It's not great. It's not great. And it makes me sad because Agents of Mayhem, when it released, was not one of the best games I ever worked on, and I've talked about this before, but Volition did continue to work on it and patch it up, and it's still not the best game I've ever worked on, but the one you can get now, all patched up, is a very entertaining ride. And there are some fun storylines, and there's some really good writing in that product.
All right, and can you confirm now that Saints Row was actually a Saints Row game? I'm sorry. Can you confirm now that Agents of Mayhem was actually a Saints Row game?
Agents of Mayhem. I cannot confirm or deny it, but I can also say that Agents of Mayhem ended up being a direct offshoot of one of the 4 endings from Saints Row 4.
You said that on the show before.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So I think
Johnny Gat ends up in it. So and they have fleur-de-lis and purple everywhere. So draw your own conclusions.
I mean, that was a big speculation that Agents was actually a spin-off, but it was never confirmed or denied.
There was a lot of back and forth during development of it, of whether or not it was.
All right. And one thing I didn't announce on the show, which I guess I could ask you before we actually close out the show, there was a trophy that was glitching on me in the Division 2 that it finally popped. Is there... If a trophy glitches, is that like a dev issue or is that a console issue?
Yes. I've talked about this before. The whole concept of certification is not to make sure that your game is perfect. It's to make sure that when your game fails, that people understand it's the game failing and not the console failing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it could be more than likely. If it's a trophy glitching, then I'm going to point at the software, not the hardware.
Well,
like there's something in the Division that makes that trophy not work correctly.
Well, because I mean, when people have issues with trophies, they usually go to the developers or try to contact the developers to get it. And like with the Maneater trophies, that was something that the team, I can't remember who did Maneater, but that was something the team actually had to go in and fix. And they announced, via their own personal blog that they had fixed these. So that was when it seems to be people reach out to the developers or the publishers when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, if trophies were failing across the board, that would be a platform issue. But if one trophy in a specific game by a specific publisher is having problems, then that's more of a game issue.
Yeah, because the trophy that glitched on me was I had to complete a manhunt on challenging, which I've done several times. And then one day I just loaded up the game and the trophy popped.
Huh.
I wasn't even in the game yet. I was on choosing my character and the trophy popped.
Well, and there's so many things that can come into play there. Because a lot of that stuff is tracked on third-party databases and third-party servers. Like, it's not uncommon. It's not common, but it's certainly not also ultra rare that you'll get a community post on Sea of Thieves, as an example, be like, hey, we know that loot aggregation, like your score is not going to go up in time tonight because there's a problem with the database server, but we are still tracking all of the numbers and you will eventually get your gold total. So there's, internet issues, machine issues, bad patch update issues. We've built the world on very shaky infrastructure, and so you just got to learn to roll with it sometimes.
All right. Rick says he wants to come when he comes back on the show. He wants you to join him.
We can work on that.
So, all right, let's close out the show. Alex, your shout out, sir.
All right, I get to light this candle. So I want to give a shout out to the listeners, the community that is Trophy Whores, the lifeblood, the fuel to the fire. We've got some of the folks in the chat. Thank you all for asking questions as we go along, for keeping the conversation going, and just everything you do to support Trophy Whores. And without you all, this doesn't exist. We wouldn't want to do this. So thank you all, and again, thank you to Mark Frazier for the going the extra mile and facilitating that sense of competition within us all with the scores and the scoring system that Mark set up. Give a shout out to Tricky and to Yield, and of course the biggest shout out to Jeff for coming on. Again, we say it and we really mean it, that Jeff brings a certain insight that we cannot have from really any other guests we've had on. So not just the intelligence that he brings, not just the conversation, but also the humor, how funny he is, and just how easy he is to talk to. So thank you, Jeff, for joining us again. I know it's some of your free time, some of your leisure time, but we do appreciate you, sharing your views and your expertise with us and our community.
I love doing it.
And last but not least, I'm giving a shout out to my awesome and lovely girlfriend, Ashley. We spent today building Legos while watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So it was a pretty spectacular day.
All right. Yield your shout out, sir.
Shout out to Nitro and the Brain 76 for playing some Rocket League last week. A shout out to my wife for finding me a Jarts set at a garage sale.
I'm sorry, a what set?
A Jarts set.
Was it like the lawn darts that kill people?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You can't find them anywhere. They're technically illegal.
They've been illegal for decades.
Wait.
I know.
I'm still confused here. I'm still confused here. Jar.
Lawn darts were a heavy.
Lawn darts. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm good
and
now.
people got stabbed in the head with them in the 70s. Like, we're talking like 5 decades illegal.
Yeah, they're awesome. She found a set.
They're not really awesome. They're deadly.
Well, they're deadly if you're too dumb and stand underneath them. You're not supposed to throw them at each other, but they're awesome. Huge shout out for her for that. Shout out to Mark for doing the trophy points. Shout out to the Twitch chat thanks for hanging out. Alex and Tricky for recording tonight, and as always, a huge shout out to Jeff for coming on and giving us insight to the industry. Love it. Even though I don't always understand it, it's always cool to listen to.
One thing before I give my go to Jeff for the shout outs. Jeff, Rick wants to know, does Saints Row 1 still hold up because he has it on the 360?
Yes.
Okay. And Yield.
Well, it holds up. You have to understand, it is a game of its time.
Okay.
Think about it this way. At this point, it's practically a retro title, so you have to look at it like that. Don't go into it thinking that it's going to hold up to, say, Saints Row 3. But it is a game of its time, and it represents the things that were known in pop culture of the time in which it was made. And in that case, yes, it holds up like any other medium from that era.
All right, and Yield, Rick wants to say, fuck, those things are dangerous. That kid that died was in the garden next door. Jeff, your shout-outs.
I want to shout out to my girlfriend's family. I got home about an hour before the show. I was over there at my girlfriend's house about an hour away, and we spent all weekend starting to build a deck in her backyard. And her brother and her dad were super helpful. And so we got quite a lot of it done. I want to shout out to the community because you guys have kept this show going. This podcast has been going forever, and that's awesome. And I do want to give a shout out to my friends at Volition. I know it's been hard, but they're at the finish line, and the game hits for everybody next month, and I think it's going to do really well. And I know I'm going to be out there buying a copy of it because it's the last official game I've worked on, and I'm really curious to see what everyone's contributed to it over the pandemic years and after I left.
All right. And that should be gold by now, right? Or very close to being gold?
I mean, it's like August 25th or something?
I think that's launch day.
Yeah.
I thought it was in September.
We're 4.5 weeks away. 5 weeks away.
I thought Saints Row was in September.
No, it's August.
No, it's August.
Really? I don't know.
Check us.
Let me look real
No,
quick.
you're right. You guys are right. For some reason, I thought it was September.
I was gonna say Jeff's sitting here saying what the date is, the month is, and Tricky's like, I don't know, can't trust you.
No,
It's Volition.
Just because you worked on the game doesn't mean you know anything. You're wrong, sir.
I didn't mean that in any way, shape, or form like that. I just, for some reason, I had it in my head. Saints Row was September.
Yeah, it's the 22nd or the 25th, but it's August.
All right. I can't even get to it right now because it's asking for my age restriction.
I want to say I think it's the 25th because I think it was originally February 22nd.
I think it was originally 2/22, and then it got moved to 8/25. That sounds right.
All right. Well, either way, it's in August. End of August.
Yes.
I want to give a shout out to Jeff. As you'll pointed out, I love having Jeff on the show, but sometimes he just makes me feel stupid because I don't know what he's saying. But I love you, Jeff, and
I love you too, man.
I'm gonna say this because at this point it's probably never gonna happen. Pre-pandemic, I was actually gonna fly out and go to GDC one time and just sit in the audience and ask you a trophy question, just to see if you recognized who I was and see what your response was gonna be.
That's an expensive damn troll right there.
But it was
He buys like 10 PlayStation 5s, so he's got the money.
Like a pass to GDC is like $1,800.
Well, listen, we're all committed in 9 years to go to Italy for episode 1000. So.
Oh, okay, all right.
I mean, at that point, 1,700 is really not that much.
I'm all for dropping the money on the troll. You go to great ends for the joke.
Yes, but I thought how funny it would be if I sit like a panel with you and just pop up and say, "Hey, just to can you put a trophy in this game, or can you fix this trophy just to see if you recognize me?" Unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I don't work on games anymore. Ha!
Yeah. So, that being said, again, I love having you on the show, and you are welcome anytime. I know that many of our guests wouldn't mind double teaming and having you on the show with them. And like I said, Daryl's still trying to get me on, get me to get you to go on his show. Maybe I'll bring you on with Daryl's here so you can feel like what it's like to podcast with you.
Okay.
Shout out to Alex and Yield, who have been very patient with this whole Twitch thing. Again, a special shout out to Yield, because I know he's been ultra patient with this, with the interruptions and whatnot. But I think it brings an added layer to the show. So I appreciate all the listeners, all the people in the Twitch chat. Appreciate it. Shout out to Sweet Mama D. Shout out to the Goddess. And if there's nothing else, until next week, happy trophy hunting.
Heads up.
Five seconds of silence. Five, four, three, two, one, and stop. 20611.
Oh, my son.